Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of TAETRO Talks. So excited to have you all here today. And I'm really excited for today's show because for the first time in a few episodes, we actually have a guest, which I will talk about in a moment. She's really cool. I know some of you have already been talking about being hyped for her in the comments in the chat here. But yeah, it's really exciting to have a guest on. So if you do know our guest, Neon Vines, you know that she is an awesome Ableton Live music producer, performer, electronic music producer, singer, songwriter, all the things all at once. And what I want you all to do is prepare some questions. If you've checked out Neon Vines' video, actually, if you haven't yet, checked out Neon Vines, just ignore my whole intro right now and open a new tab and watch some Neon Vines videos real quick, and then come back and get ready with some questions, because we're going to talk all about gear, being an artist, and surviving and making videos and all the good stuff. And thank you all for tuning in. We are brought to you today by 343 Labs and 343 TV, of which this show is part of. So if you don't know, 343 TV is broadcasting live every single day on youtube.com/343labs with a different show every single day. We've got Ableton Live on Mondays. Tuesday, we do a talk show. Wednesdays, we've got stuff about home studio music production. Theory Thursdays. Production basics on Fridays. Cellways Techno. Saturdays, which he has a really amazing guest on this Saturday. And then we do feedback sessions occasionally on Sundays. So check that out, youtube.com/343labs, because I'm also watching the chat over there. And I see Andrew Duke and John H. Kingston III over there in the 343 Labs chat. So thank you all for tuning in from New York and from Canada. Amazing. And I see a lot of people in the chat on my channel as well. So what is up, Jay Scholes? What's up, Delirium? Delirium tuning in at 1:15 a.m. Their time. So thank you for staying up late with us. And Delirium says, Neon Vines is an amazing artist. It's true. Sammy Gamer says, what up, TAETRO? Could you recommend some cheap DAWs? Yeah, we'll get into that later. Nishark, what's up? Hello, hello. What's up, 820 Beats? My mom is in the chat. Hello, Mom. Capel Productions is here. Tyra White says, I love watching her videos. Vines is so gifted. Yes, y'all are hyped. My dad is in the chat, and he put a black heart and a pink heart because he's so hip and he knows that I like Blackpink. Bueno is here in the chat as well. DJ Waxtarito, what is up? Hello, I'm good. Thank you for asking. Byron Vega, hello. Sean Bartley, what is up? Gandalf, Red Syrup, hello. All right, it seems like y'all are excited for the guest and to get into the interview today. Kieran is just chiming in the chat as well. Hello, thank you all. As you watch today, folks, don't do it just yet. When we start to get into this interview, if you could share it on your story, take a video, tag me, tag Neon Vines, tag 343 Labs, let people know that you're watching so we can get as many eyes as possible on this interview today. But without further ado, what I would like to do is show you a quick clip of what Neon Vines has been up to and a little bit of what she does, and then we will get into the interview. So let's check out this clip by Neon Vines.
Break me, I'm too weak. Save me from my sleep. I want you so bad, and you know this. I'm falling off track on my plan for the night. I try to hold back, but you know this. Dig it on, don't matter. Dig it on, don't matter. If you're gonna feel better, if you're gonna feel better, yeah. Dig it on, don't matter. Dig it on, don't matter. How you gonna feel after? How you gonna feel after?
Well, here we go. Neon Vines, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here today.
What's up, you guys? How's everyone doing? Hope everybody's good.
I'm
happy to be here. Thank you for asking me to be here, by the way.
For sure.
This is dope.
I was running through my list of who are the epic Ableton Live performers. We've had some great guests already, and I was like, whoa, we need to get Neon Vines on the show. I've seen your videos. I've definitely seen you live at some trade show as well. So I've seen
I saw you at NAMM, but I didn't talk to you there.
Why didn't we talk at NAMM?
I don't know. I
But
saw you and you were talking to someone. And I don't know. I
now
just
we'll
didn't have-
never be able to meet in person again because of the current
I
situation.
know, right? We
We've
missed the
missed
chance.
it. Anyway, I'm stoked to have you. The audience seems stoked that you're here. We were just talking about this off air, but I mentioned that you're probably the first guest that maybe has like more controllers and more gear than I do. And I think people are stoked about that.
Dude, any excuse to talk about gear, I'm down.
Absolutely. And I'm
For
excited
sure.
to get into that for sure. And
Definitely.
I want to remind everybody, if you do have questions and they pop up, make sure you throw them in the chat because I am watching and monitoring the chat. And we would love to include you all.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know how to start this. I like to start these interviews a lot of the times asking the artists, well, talking about how like we're performers, we create content, we produce music. Like it's such like a wide web of things. So my first question for you is like, when people ask you like, hey, what do you do? Like, how do you describe what you do?
Oh my
How do
God.
you define
So
yourself?
I had to like rehearse this because for a while I'm like, okay, I can't be stuttering over this question. That's like the most basic question for someone to get to know you. So I just say, I'm an electronic music producer and multi-instrumentalist. So I play a couple cool things and then I just go into like the Seaboard or something like that and try to explain that. But it's not an easy title to convey, especially to somebody that's not in that world, because it's a pretty niche, like, place,
It's
the
a
gear
niche
world.
and overwhelming at the same time.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's you have to wear a lot of hats, which you know this for sure. But it's like you kind of need split personality disorder to pull all this off. 'Cause,
Absolutely.
like,
You're constantly playing different
split
roles.
the creative hat and then the technical hat with mixing and everything like that, and then the whole video production and stuff like that. It's a pretty
It's a
demanding. It's a
lot.
lot of fun, but it's definitely a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to
Sure.
get into a little bit of like how you started, because obviously you're an amazing
Yeah.
performer. I'm assuming there's some training there. Do you want to maybe talk about like your origins in just music in general? Like, is there a
Yeah.
pre-electronic music phase for you that kind of
it's
started you
pretty,
off?
to me, it's still pretty crazy where I am right now, considering like where I've come from. So for me, it was classical piano at age 6. My
Wow.
parents just forced me to do it, and I kind of hated it, to be honest with you. I'd like cry before lessons and like
Why is that
complain constantly.
everybody
Dude,
says
it's
that?
the way they teach piano is a disaster. It really
Yeah.
is. Like it's kind of a miracle that I persisted through that and like found my own way to enjoy music, rather than being forced to do it like by some formula. But anyway, it was a very valuable thing to do. Just wasn't particularly enjoyable. Then I got into drums at age 8, and drums I considered to be my foundation to everything I do now.
Cool.
I was in drumline, competed in a world-class drumline actually, and played marimba, which is super random, but
Oh, nice. So you went to one
interesting.
of those high schools that had like epic, like music program, like drumline?
Yeah, but actually in high school, a college drumline recruited me, so I was like
Oh,
split
wow.
between high school and then college. It was like a lot at that time, but yeah,
That's
I
intense.
played. Yeah, it was pretty intense. I played marimba, which I don't know if you know what that is, but like
Yeah.
I did 4 mallet marimba, so I had 4 mallets, 2 in each hand, and I feel like the skills I learned in learning marimba really apply to the Seaboard.
Wow.
Interestingly, because it's a lot of body awareness. The Seaboard's like super sensitive, obviously, so you have to be
Mhm.
really precise in how you're playing it. And with marimba, we're taught to move to be exactly centered with where we're playing. So I feel like because I learned marimba, it helped me pick up the Seaboard faster, which is kind of an interesting
Yeah, that's super
thing.
interesting.
I don't really know why, but anyway, so after drums, piano, I went to college just completely like I didn't really do much with music in college, honestly. I just studied psychology. After college, I'm like, okay, what the hell am I doing with my life? Like,
Yeah.
let's for a while I sang in a wedding band. So I was the lead vocalist in a wedding band in DC, and we were booked like 2 years out. So we were doing pretty well, but I freaking hated it. Like it was the worst job, like singing, living on a prayer, Journey, Don't
Yes,
Stop
all the
Believing.
wedding
Like
classics.
you will lose your mind slowly over time.
I did a
Especially in
little bit of that, a little cover
Did
band
you?
like scene, like
Oh my
a
God.
90s cover band at one point, which is like,
Yes.
almost the same kind of
I did
vibe.
an 80s one. That's funny.
Did you,
But
were you a music major in college? Like, did you go right
I
from,
tried that briefly for a year, but it was the same kind of visceral reaction that I had to piano lessons. Just the structure, the lack of freedom, the lack of creativity. It's music,
Yeah.
dude. It's freaking art. Like, why are we treating this like, I don't know.
It's
I
like
have
a
so
little bit
many
of a
problems
history
with the way.
lesson. Like you have to learn
Yeah.
this material in this way, and it's very
Yeah.
regimented, and this is the only thing that exists. It's like
It's
ignores the
terrible.
entire industry, basically,
Yeah.
the actual industry that's
No.
happening.
It's like, dude, uh, I could go on a rant for that
For
for
sure.
real, but like, luckily I realized that if I keep doing this, if I studied music in college, I feel like it would make me less likely to be where I am now. Interesting enough. So I just did it my own way. And then after college, I was like, I gotta get a job. So I worked as an emergency service coordinator. So basically got emergency service calls over the phone, most stressful job ever.
I
And
imagine.
during
Yeah.
that, during doing that for a year, it made me realize, dear Jesus, I need to do music. Like I needed it more than ever. I didn't realize how badly I needed it in my life. Then when I couldn't do it, I would take my full size 88 key keyboard in my car and practice during lunch break, like bring my guitar, practice. And I just realized like I need to do this. So
Yeah.
I told, I put in my 2 weeks notice, and I pretty much just closed my eyes, pointed my finger on a map, and was like, I'm going to move to Austin. I'm just going to see what happens. I've heard good things about Austin. Didn't know a single person there. Had never been there before, but I was like, I'm going to make it work. So
And where were
showed
you
up
from
there in
originally?
DC.
So from DC to Austin. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
quite the move.
It was like probably the best decision I ever made, though.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That takes a leap of
Yeah.
faith. Did you feel
It
like
did.
super nervous in that moment? Did you have a
I
plan going to
wasn't
Austin?
nervous
Like,
because I needed a change so badly that I was like embracing it fully. And like the Austin music scene, they had a lot of like electronic acoustic hybrid performances that were really intriguing to me. They'd have somebody playing violin and have a launch pad in front of them. I'm like, what is that
nice.
colorful thing? I didn't know anything about Ableton. Like this is 3 years ago, by the way. I didn't know anything about Ableton. I didn't know anything
3 years
about
ago.
gear. Yeah, dude. Like I
Wow.
got obsessed as hell with this. But I mean, I've been aware of that stuff, but definitely, I started pretty much from scratch when I moved to
That's
Austin. And then
amazing.
yeah, what was inspiring to me was just like the potential of music technology and gear and what you can do with it. And like it just blew my mind, and it just sparked this infatuation that I can't shake now.
Yeah.
So the first thing I got was the MPCX. That was like a huge investment for me. It's like $2,600 with the coverage you get with it or whatever. And that was like all the money I had when I moved to Austin. I'm like, I'm doing this, dude. If I need
Huge.
to return it, I have 30 days to return it to Guitar Center. That's where I got it from. And luckily, like, after 2 weeks of hating my life, I finally started to pick it up. And that's the thing that I tell people is like, it sucks at first. Learning
It
anything
does.
new,
Yes.
it's rough. Like you have to fight the urge to give up. And for me, I have this like built-in that voice that's like, are you gonna give up? You
Yeah.
can't give up. Like I'll be going to sleep at night and be like, no, I'm not gonna let this defeat me, and get out of bed and keep working. It's like that's the only way I've been able to get to where I am, because I don't
Yeah.
let the process defeat me, I guess.
And what I tell people, like, because I get a lot of beginners and like intermediate on the show, people just starting out, I say, like, you have to embrace the fact that if you're just starting out, you're about to make the worst music that you're ever going to make. And that's
You
okay.
like can't barely even make music.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you have to just acknowledge that. I couldn't even get sound out of my DAW for like 5 days, dude. Like it was.
And you come from having
was
such a
terrible.
strong musical background too.
Exactly. It's just so frustrating.
A lot of folks,
I mean, yeah.
they have the battle of like, some folks have no musical background, no production background, and just trying to just start somewhere.
It's
like,
so rough.
yes, it's tough. But everybody goes through it.
I mean, everybody, workflow is like the key term everyone talks about, but it's everything. Seriously, if you can't get your ideas out smoothly without, obstacles getting in the way, without getting distracted by technical issues and stuff like that, you're never going to be able to make music. So you have to put the time in before being able to be creative. That's a luxury. That's something that comes after putting the work in, the shitty work of
Yeah.
like learning, the gear, the software, whatever it might be, as much as you can before trying to get creative with it. Because if you dive in thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna make cool beats. I want to make a beat," you're gonna get frustrated, And if you get frustrated, you give up. So I've learned through many failures that the difference between the gear that's glistening in the light and the gear that has dust on it is the time I put in before turning it on to learn about it, to research it, to watch videos and everything like that. It's like being in school. I mean, it's a lot of
Yeah,
fun. I don't want to make it seem like it's a terrible process, but I just think that, the emphasis is on the cool stuff, but there's
for
a
sure.
lot of hard work that, I think doesn't get the attention it needs. And I
Y-
think it's helpful for people to expect that, and
Yes.
know that that's part of it.
Yeah, and that's one of the main reasons I started doing this show is like to really just expose that. Of course, we're all putting our best work out there, and I'm sure people watch stuff like your performances and are like, mind blown. I want to do that. So then they go buy a bunch of gear and they say, great, now I'm going to do that. But it's like
That's the
that Family
thing.
Guy thing where you buy all the instruments and you're like, oh God, we don't know any songs, you know?
I know, exactly.
So it's like to just
Exactly.
shed light on that, I think is so important. And
Exactly.
it's also everything you talked about, like learning the gear, and just getting over that learning hump. That also has to do with like if the gear works and behaves as it's supposed to, because so much of what we
Totally.
do has to do with like how do you overcome when things go wrong?
Troubleshooting is everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, for me, the difference between a professional producer and amateur is how quickly they deal with problems. It's not whether there's problems or not. There's
there
always
will be
problems, no
problems.
matter
Yeah,
what level you're at. There's issues. It's how quickly you can locate where the problem's happening and possible solutions. And I think the more you do it, the faster you get with that. And that really is just how quickly you respond to problems. That's the mark of how good of a producer you are. You know what I mean?
totally.
Yeah.
Um, so you get the MPC. Do you just start making beats? Like, are you writing? Are you using it
No,
as
I
a
just hate my
songwriting
life for
tool?
2 weeks. So what I did was the manual's super long. It's like 200 something pages, whatever. I started working my way through the manual. I didn't know any of these terms like filter. What the heck is a filter? Like I just tried to read the glossary terms. I was learning about music production while learning the MPC. It was kind of a whole bunch of skills that I was learning simultaneously. It wasn't even just the gear. Um, and I tried to kind of take the mindset that we're not going to make music for a while. We're just going to learn what this thing is, what it's capable of, and how to navigate around it efficiently and quickly.
Yeah.
So that took me so long. Like I did not pick up the MPC fast. Like the workflow for me was a nightmare.
MPC
For
workflow is
probably
difficult anyway, even if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have
for
knowledge going
sure.
into it.
Definitely. I just couldn't figure out how to get to anything. I'm like, how do I do the most simple things? How do I mute this pad? I just want to mute this,
Yeah.
Simple things like that. So frustrating. But yeah, eventually you get the hang of it. There's always a breakthrough that happens and you finally kind of are like, oh, I get what this thing is. So for me, I thought I was getting a drum machine where I could just make beats and stuff, but it was so much more than that. You can
Yeah.
play instruments. I mean, do you have a standalone MPC, by the way?
Yeah, I have an MPC one right here.
Dude, yes.
Yeah.
Don't you love it?
Yeah, it's pretty great. I'm just obsessed with anything that is like obviously I love Ableton on my laptop, but like anything that's standalone that you can just take and like just live
Yes,
with it, you know?
for sure. For sure.
Yeah, there's something about that. Like I've got the Innovation Circuit and like an Electron model cycles. What else? And there's
Yes.
one other. Oh, I just got the new Machina, the Machina Plus. But like
Oh, what do you
standalone,
think about that?
I haven't been able to use it
Sorry.
yet. I'm having a Wi-Fi
Okay.
issue, and I'm working with Native Instruments to try to fix it. But
Oh,
I'm
I got you.
excited because I like the Native Instruments like working environment, and to be able to
Yeah,
take
for
that on the
sure.
go. There's just something so freeing about being able to separate yourself from the laptop, and it seems like a lot of
Definitely.
what you do. You use controllers in that way. It's like so you don't really have to interact with your computer. You have a whole
Yeah.
rig that is just becomes an extension of yourself, not an extension of the software.
I pretty much always manage anything rhythm, drums, vocal sample related on the MPC and deal with the looping on the MPC and just feed the audio into Ableton. So I'll
Great.
be doing anything melodic. I prefer to loop in Ableton and play that on a regular MIDI controller or my Seaboard or something. And then
Mhm.
anything rhythmic is the MPC. So
Yeah. Cool.
yeah, the reason I like to do that is because you have to have control over all drum elements. I want to be able to take the kick out, just the snare out, things like that. That's kind of difficult to assign to a MIDI controller in Ableton. It requires like way more memorization than I feel like it should. So for
Sure.
me, the MPC is like very visual. I can just push the pads, mute exactly where I played the kick. I can just click that and it's muted. So for me, that's kind of the workflow I prefer to do. That's the main thing I use my MPC for is drum stuff and samples, like vocal samples and stuff.
Nice. I don't
Yeah.
want to get too far ahead because I want to keep going. I want to follow your journey. You get the
Okay, cool.
MPC, you get familiar with it, you hate your life for 2 weeks, you're
Yeah.
reading the manual, you start getting comfortable with it. When does when do the floodgates open and you're like, okay, now I'll get like a Seaboard or whatever your next
So
controller
that was
was?
the next thing I got. So the floodgates open when I started realizing the potential of sound design. So when I started going in and being like, oh, I can change the filter. Oh, I can EQ. What's EQ? I was like, oh my God, you can take this sound that sounds so muffled and gross and make it something crazy awesome and add distortion on it and reverb and everything like that. And then I was like, wow, like the expression that's possible with this is crazy. And then honestly, I was just like researching music stuff all the time at that point, just out of curiosity. And I saw a video of Jordan Rudess playing the Seaboard. And I was like, dear
Yeah.
God, what is that? That's freaking crazy. That's like, I couldn't even believe that was possible. And it didn't even dawn on me that like it was something you could buy. I kind of just thought like, oh, there's one in the world. It's just like this guy, they
Like,
made
yeah,
one,
I get that.
you know? And then I was like, I wonder how expensive it is. And I was expecting something crazy because for me, it blew my mind. I'm like, this thing's gonna be like $50,000 or something. I'm like, oh, it's $1,200. I was like,
Right.
that is actually achievable. I was like, I could get that. I could invest in that.
I mean,
So
especially you come from the world of marimba. How much is a marimba
yeah,
these days? I don't even
oh,
know.
like they can be like 15 grand easily.
Jeez.
Yeah, they're
Yikes.
crazy. If you get a rosewood one that's made, yeah, dude. I mean, you can get ones that are like 3 grand, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're a lot.
Yeah. So the Seaboard draws you in and you're like, heck yeah. But you haven't talked about having any guitar background. Do you play guitar at all?
Yeah, I just taught myself guitar. I'm okay. I
Yeah,
mean, I know chords.
I only say that
Like,
because so much of what you do on the Seaboard, like especially when you take a solo or something, like I hear
I think I'm
guitar, you know?
I think I was meant to learn guitar. Like
Yeah.
I wish that I had picked up like electric guitar or something when I was a teenager. I've always wanted to just shred a solo. I can't play lead stuff on guitar. I just play chords and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I've just always wanted to shred a solo.
That's so
So
interesting.
Seaboard satisfied that, I guess, to a degree.
So is the Seaboard the jumping off point for starting to really put together some
Yeah,
serious
Seaboard was just
performances?
the point of no return. That was just when I got the Seaboard. A lot of people contact me and say how frustrated they are with it. I totally get it. It's nothing like a piano. It's like getting a completely different instrument. Don't even think of it in the same category as a piano. If you're a pianist, like my brother is an amazing piano player. He had a harder time getting used to the Seaboard than I did, and I have less ability on the piano. So I think there's kind of a sweet spot in skill level with the Seaboard. If you're really good at piano, you actually kind of have a harder time picking it up. You'll get used to it eventually, but I don't know. It's so different. It's hard to explain. But for me, for whatever reason, it was so intuitive. It made sense to me immediately. The second I turned it on, played sounds, I was like, chills.
Yeah.
Just absolutely mind blowing. And yeah, I mean that just sparked my curiosity in music technology in general, and just took it to a whole nother level. Now I live in a spaceship, so
For
this is my
sure.
life now.
It's so epic.
This is where it's taking me. It's pretty crazy. It's like it's wild when I look back and think like I had no idea any of this stuff even existed 3 years ago.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy how quickly obsession can take you to a different place.
Absolutely. Like I came from a world of writing and singing songs like with an acoustic guitar, like folk
Oh, that's
pop
awesome.
stuff. So like now I look at like, you know, the spaceship that I'm in, you know, we're in
Yes.
like parallel spaceships.
Absolutely.
I think about it like, wow, I can't imagine like something along
So
the way
wild.
just like caught my interest and like it just spiraled, you know, it just
Isn't
spirals
it
and
so
becomes
much
this
fun
obsession.
though? It's
So
just
much
like
fun.
I love this little world of like gear nerds and people like I'm loving this right now, by the way, because most of my friends like don't even know anything about this technical stuff or anything.
Right.
So anytime I start ranting about it, they're just like drifting away. So this is
Yeah.
like This is perfect for me
It's
right now.
it's unusual to be able to have a conversation with somebody that is like
Yeah,
as into it like as you are. So
for
that's cool.
sure.
But
For
we're
sure.
also in a bit of a renaissance time too because there's
Yeah,
so much new stuff constantly coming out.
definitely.
So I think we're lucky to have developed this passion at around just the right time when
100%. I
like
think about that.
technology
Yeah.
is just like taking off.
Oh my God. It's like on the, is this called a parabola? I don't know you know what I'm talking about.
Come on,
You
come
know what
on.
I'm talking about. We're
Yeah,
like here, we're about to skyrocket on a vertical line.
for
Like
sure.
every time I hear about like the next new thing, I'm like, dude, are you joking? Like, are they just, is there's
Exactly.
gonna be something that you plug into your brain and it just writes the song that you have in mind? Like at some point, I
Totally.
feel like
I'm all about
it's
it. I'm
wild.
sure that's what Elon Musk is working on right now.
Dude, probably. He's
Yeah.
working on everything.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's continue on the journey. MPC,
Yes.
Seaboard. When do the cameras come into play? Like when do you start saying like, "Hey, I'm working pretty hard on this stuff. Let me try to make some videos."
Yeah. I'm trying to think. You know what? I'm really bad at like timeline, like
Hmm.
knowing dates and stuff, but I'm thinking it was around like 4 months after maybe something like that. I don't know. I wish I was better at that, but it's
Yeah.
something like that where I was like, I want to try to put a performance together and have the Seaboard and loop everything and start from scratch and not have any backing tracks and just try to loop everything, but not do. So the problem with live looping is that it takes so long to get to where you're going.
You got to make the whole
Um,
song.
you
Yeah.
gotta make you gotta loop every little part. So I'm like, I'm gonna play multiple parts. So I'm gonna play bass line with my left hand and melodic line with my right hand, get there faster, you know? So my whole kind of concept was I'm going to live perform from scratch a song in a typical song structure without, the live looping trap that you get stuck into the too much repetition. Um, so it took a lot of work to
Yeah.
to figure out how to do that, and then I just started putting videos out. I had no idea. I didn't even consider like sponsorships or endorsements or anything like that, or working with brands. Like that never crossed my mind.
Right.
But Rolly reached out to me maybe a couple months after I had like two videos or three. I don't know. I had a couple videos out. And they were like, "Hey, like I don't remember." They said like, "Would you want to make Michael Jackson's Beat It and cover that song on Rolly Blocks?" I was like, "That's not really my like song of choice, but I mean, yeah, sure, I'll figure it out. That's awesome that you reached out to me. Like blew my mind. I was like, you are the gods in my mind. Like you
Right.
created this masterpiece. Like, of course I want to work with you." So I made that, and then I was, I didn't get paid for it or anything. I didn't even consider that as a possibility. And then that sort of started to snowball and other brands started to notice me, and then all that kind of
It's
stuff
crazy.
happened.
Like
So
once that genie is out of the bottle, you're like, I
yeah,
can't believe this is real.
it's wild. It's wild. It's so much fun though. Like, so getting anything new for me, like obviously I'm obsessed with gear, but it's not because it's beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. While it is, that's of course not the root of why I'm so drawn to this. It's my obsession and infatuation with what's possible with music technology. And anytime I get a new piece of gear sent to me, it's such a blessing. And I'm like, I can't wait to see what I can create because of this. Because anytime I get something new, I end up creating something that like I never would have created otherwise. So it's really a blessing
Yeah.
to have these opportunities and be able to draw parts of myself out that maybe I never otherwise would have even known are there. So yeah, that's what makes it fun for me.
It kind of like shows you just the power that an artist can have. And I'm curious to hear about like how your career path has
Right.
changed with like creating videos and like becoming super popular on social
Yeah.
media. I mean, I'm looking right now and your
It's
How Deep Is
everything's
Your
changed.
Love cover has 1.9 million views. Too
Yeah.
High,
Oh, it
1.6
does? Damn.
million.
I didn't even know
Lay
that.
Low, 1.4 million. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Like you're reaching such a broad
That
audience. Like
yeah.
did you have a point where you're like,
So
okay, doing this, like you went from like playing in the or whatever to now you're
yeah.
like reaching millions of people.
Dude, it's wild. It's wild. So the crazier thing to me is that at the start of this year, I had I think my top video was Laylo. It had 35,000 views.
Wow.
So literally this year, I don't even know. I don't even know the numbers, but it went crazy. And I think I attribute that to the 4 producers that I did with Andrew Wong. So thank God he reached out to me. That was
Yeah,
just a
somebody
blessing
dropped in
for
the
me.
chat that they found out about you through that. So was that an
Yeah.
amazing like launching point?
Oh my God. Well, of course I knew who Andrew was. He
Right.
messaged me. I'm like, it's Andrew Wong. He's like the king of this
Yeah.
world, So, yeah, he was just like, would you want to write a track, flip the sample, whatever. I'm like, hell yeah, but I don't know if I'm good enough. Like I had all these doubts in my mind. I'm like, God, I'm like competing. It's not a competition, right? But at the same time, it's like people are going to be comparing you
Of
to the
course.
other people. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like, damn, I need to like research and like learn how to do this better. Like that. That's always, I always feel I think some degree of inadequate. I think everybody has those kind of thoughts that just seep into your mind, no matter what level you're at. It's just it's not like it's self-doubt, but it's just imposter syndrome, I guess some people call it. But
I
I
want you to
conquered.
talk so much about this because people are like looking up to you as like being this amazing player, millions of views,
No.
amazing like videos and stuff. Like, how are you dealing with that? Are you feeling that still all the time? Like, does it ever go
Well,
away?
I want to share so much with people. I want to dive into the world of education and giving back, but there's this voice in my head that's like, you don't know enough yet. I think I know enough to know what I don't know at this point, and that kind of overwhelms me because it's like I don't want to go speaking with such authority on everything, and like I feel like I have so much to learn myself, and I'm trying to conquer that and be like, yes, like you do have things to offer that people would be interested in hearing. Maybe you're not like the ultimate pro of the world, but it doesn't mean you can't go sharing knowledge. And I think I'm constantly trying to, tell myself that. But
I think
yeah,
it's super important for the audience to hear you say that because like I'm sure like I just said, like people looking up to you and like thinking what you do is amazing. Like even when you're at the level that you're at, that doubt in the back of
no,
your mind and that
yeah.
insecurity like still like nags at you.
There's just infinite potential and knowledge to be acquired in this world that like I watch videos all the time that I'm like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. I didn't even, and things about Ableton. And like I work in Ableton every day of my life. So I still feel like um I'm like waiting to feel like I know enough, but I don't think that's a good strategy. I think
For sure.
putting yourself out there and just going for it. And that's what I am always pushing myself to do that. Anytime I put a video out or post it, I'm like, damn it. It's like honestly a kind of sickening feeling for me before I post anything online, where I don't even fully know what it is. It might be some kind of perfectionist thing, but it's
You are
um
you're
it's
always
hard.
your own worst critic, you know? So
Yeah,
like you see
for
things in
sure.
your own work that people will never notice. And that's something
For
that I've been
sure.
like dealing with too. Like nobody's going to
Yeah.
notice that I messed this thing up or even like with video
No.
production, nobody's going to notice that the title is like slightly off center, like crazy
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. But because producing is such a like you have to be so detail oriented. I
Yeah.
think that mindset kind of intrudes all other elements of the process, and it can be a challenge working with that, especially on the creative side of things. So kind of like I was saying with the split personality thing, I think it's important to sort of separate the creative from the technical and analytical and not let them have too much overlap. You know, I don't know. I just feel like it's a
How
challenge. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How do you split your? I guess it comes down to time, right? Because you have only so much time. You get new gear. Okay,
Yep.
got to learn the new gear. You want to make another video. All right,
Yep.
video production's one thing. Or you want to just like improve your technique and your skills. That's a whole nother time. Or you want to write songs. Like,
Yeah.
are you regimented about how you kind of divide your time, or are you just kind of doing what feels right on a given
I
day?
am. I'm pretty organized in terms of like what's on my immediate agenda and what I need to be focused on. The trick that I've learned with like creativity is to you have to have the most open mind possible going into it. I think having being like I'm going to write a song today, I don't think that's a good way to go about it. For me, it's like I'm going to sit down and make cool sounds and see what happens. For me, creativity and writing songs is all about decisiveness. It's rolling with mistakes. It's, flowing with whatever the first sound you pull up is and trying to make it into something. I think if you get too hung up in sound design at too early of a phase or picking the perfect sounds, whatever it might be. It's really hindrance. I don't know if that's a word, hindrance.
Sure,
Maybe.
let's go with it.
Let's roll with it. But yeah, that's what I mean by like split personality. It's important to workflow is the most important during the creative process because you need to be able to get those ideas out as fluidly as possible to the point where you're not even aware that you're recording them, that you're all of the technical side of doing that. It should be all about getting the energy out that you want to get out and getting your ideas out smoothly as possible. So
Like
for me,
instinctually, I try to describe it like you got to go on your instincts, like at first, just get the
yeah,
ideas out. Don't get caught
100%,
up.
100%. Don't get caught up. Just be as decisive as possible. Be like, okay, maybe this sounds not completely perfect, but we're going to roll with it. We're going to make it work. I
Right.
think that's the perfect mindset for that. But in terms of like how I structure my days and things like that, it's difficult because I get contacted all the time with like opportunities that are so different. Like it's such a wide range of things. It's like we're going to send you this gear and use it in this video in this kind of way. And then there's, oh, we want you on the affiliate program, or there's just such a variety of opportunities that get thrown at me. And I think I don't know, I embrace pretty much everything that comes my way. So right now when people ask me, what's your goal? Where are you going towards? I'm like, oh, I have a general idea of what I'm working towards, but not fully.
Right.
I think having a goal sometimes is restrictive, especially in our industry where there's such a variety of income streams and such a variety of ways that we can put our music out there. To have some like concrete vision of what you're aiming towards, I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if that's a good thing. Of course, you want to have some idea. You don't want to just be going blindly in life, but I think being open-minded and considering every single thing that comes your way is a good way to approach it. But
Because
for the
then you
most
can just
part,
be making like progress. You know that you're making progress. You
exactly,
know that you're growing. You're not necessarily aiming at a specific target. There's some
100%,
targets in the distance, but as you get closer, you'll make those decisions.
100%. But it's good to be open-minded and take opportunities. But the opportunities you say no to are just as important as the ones you say yes to. So if
Yes.
you can't just say yes to everything. If I get offers like, "Will you review these headphones?" And they're like $50 headphones. I'm like, "Dude, I
It's
don't
like,
know. Like,
yeah,
does
why?
that align with like what I'm doing? Is that going to be a good use of my time?" For me, the question I ask myself now is when a new opportunity presents itself is, are the skills that are necessary to pull this off going to apply to something other than this? If the answer is no, I'm not going to do it now. So for me, if it's like learning some totally bizarre piece of gear that I don't even like, that I need to incorporate into a video or something, I ask myself like, okay, well, I'm going to put like a ton of time into this. Is this a good use of my time? So for me now, it's not about saying yes to everything and doing as much as I can. It's about being strategic in what I say yes to and how I spend my time and making sure that the way I'm growing is going to be able to apply to things in the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because you can always take those skills and apply them somewhere else. Some of this
Totally.
like
Then
is
that's
like
a good use of
paid
your time.
training. Yeah, it almost becomes paid training because you learn this
Yes,
skill, then you
100%. That's a good
carry
way
it
of
on.
putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. What do you
Um.
think about that Orba thing? Sorry, that's a kind of
Oh,
a side note. What do you
this
think about
thing.
that? You make it look freaking awesome.
I love simplicity and
Yes,
minimalism, and
totally.
when what we were talking about before in terms of like instinct and like trying to have a fast workflow.
Mhm.
I just find that a lot of times what helps me is limitation. So even though I've got like
Oh my
all this
gosh,
gear,
yes.
I'm sure you can relate. Like we have all this gear, and
100%.
sometimes we're like, how do we use as many pieces of gear as possible and completely
Yes,
optimize it? Sometimes I want to forget about all that and just use one
100%.
thing. So like
Definitely.
Orba specifically, like it's got you can play 8 notes. It's like already in key, chord
That's awesome.
mode, drums. Like it's a limitation that I really like, and I have
Yeah,
been using it in
yeah.
songwriting and also like just beat production. Like I'm just having fun with it. I love that aspect
Dude,
of it.
that's so dope. Yeah, you know that quote like limitless and limitations. Have you ever heard of that? So for me, like, man, I've been thinking about like the creative process recently and how people think that creating is adding something to the world. Like it's kind of you'd be like, oh yeah, well if you create something, you made something. But
Right.
for me, the nature of creativity is the art of refinement, the art of
Yeah.
taking away. If you have all these options, it's about narrowing it down to something where it makes sense and you're able to kind of connect the dots and make all these pieces work together as a whole unit. I think having every freaking sound in the universe available to you is not helpful. So
For
that's the
sure.
challenge that I run into a lot because I obviously have a ton of gear. Anytime I sit down to write something, I usually restrict myself in terms of what software I'm allowed to use. I try to like put these, self-imposed restrictions on myself
Yeah.
because I know if I like Omnisphere, what is it got like 10,000 sounds or something? Like, dude, you're not gonna make anything if you get too hung up in possibilities and options. So I try to constantly limit myself. So yeah,
Yeah.
what you said about the Orba, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I found like with sound packs too, like it's the same thing that you talked
Dude,
about. Like I have
totally.
all the sound packs, I have my own Splice subscription, and then I also get other sound packs for free, and then
Yep.
presets, complete 13 just came out.
Yeah.
So even like if you say, okay, I'm only going to use one plugin today, like you said, like
Yeah.
Omnisphere, like 10,000 plus, like
Dude,
that's a limitation.
yeah, totally. No, it's a challenge, but you know what? This is kind of a side note, dude. Do you know Touche Expressive E?
Yeah, I can't
My,
reach my
you have
SE,
one.
but
Okay, I was
it's
gonna
up
ask
there.
if you had one. What do you think
Yeah.
about that? That's my favorite instrument right now.
Really? That's so
I'm
interesting. I
obsessed with it.
I think it's cool. I think I just have too much stuff, so it's hard to focus on one thing.
Totally.
I
No,
had
I
used it
completely get that.
in a recent video. I think the other thing, like there's limitations in trying to just like get your ideas out instinctually, but there's also like the idea of like habit breaking and creating things
Yeah,
in ways that you don't before. So that ties
for
into the
sure.
Orba as well. Like, okay, I don't play round instruments like this very often. And then the
Yeah.
touche, like one hand on a keyboard and the other hand like adjusting like timbre and things like that.
Yeah.
I think maybe you could speak to that. Like, why is it one of your favorite instruments right now? And I'm gonna grab it off the shelf so people can see it.
Oh man, why is it? Well, first of all, the sounds in their Lie software are badass.
Oh
Like
yeah,
the
for
all
sure.
the preset sounds. That's the problem with the Seaboard right now for me is I love the Seaboard. Obviously, I use it in most of my videos, but like the sounds, man, the sound. They need somebody to
It's
come in and make
yeah,
a sample pack of like sounds that respond the same way. The problem is every preset requires a different kind of touch, and
yeah.
that's a big challenge. I don't know. And plus, like the sounds, I find most of them are not very usable. I don't know. I don't want to down talk the Seaboard, obviously, but like, I mean, if you notice in my videos, I pretty much play like the same preset in a lot of them, and that's for
Yep.
that reason. But for me, the Touche is very similar in like the kinds of expressiveness you can get out, but the sounds are awesome. So that's kind of
Yeah.
like what I've been looking for. Apparently, you can use the sounds with the Seaboard too, but I tried that and I couldn't. It didn't really work very well for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But
Totally.
yeah,
I think sound design and like having the right presets, that's why I have been super into the native instrument stuff lately, because I think they're putting a strong effort into, a
yeah,
lot of what I do is like very contemporary, like pop, trap, hip hop, beat making, stuff like that. So I'm looking for that sound. Like if you're looking for that kind of sound, you gotta get in the right sound libraries. And I went through that with Ableton
yeah.
too. Like as being an Ableton user for a long time, I just used like stock Ableton everything, and the
Hmm.
presets are just not like it's hit or miss.
Yeah,
If
totally.
you especially if you want to make contemporary music.
I don't really like the Ableton stock instrument sounds.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think it's important for software companies to think about that. Like it kind of goes back to what we were
definitely.
talking
Dude,
about.
that's like everything, man.
Yeah,
That's
it goes
so important.
like we were talking about music education being like kind of ignoring the music industry. I think some of these software companies like need to pay a little bit more attention to the contemporary industry and what's happening.
A
Not that
hundred
it has to be
percent.
trendy, but your users want to use the sounds that they're hearing in the tracks that inspire them. And I think
100%.
it goes both ways with the Touche and with the Touche SE that I have here. The sounds are so expressive and it's like so
Yeah,
cool. Like as soon as you touch it, you're
yeah.
inspired. Sounds can really inspire people in that way.
Definitely. I think like it helps you find the sound you're looking for because you can kind of move your hand around it and explore and you get like it's crazy that with one preset sound you can get like hundreds of varieties of sounds out of it,
Yeah.
depending on how you're moving it around. So for me, it helps me a lot because, you don't get too restricted in like one specific sound and choosing one specific sound since you can get so many different textures out of it. So I think that's
Yeah.
what draws me to it.
For sure.
Yeah.
I want to shout one other instrument out because Stencil is in the chat right now, and I don't know if you've used the Stencil Morph at all, but I just
Oh,
used
this is
one.
badass.
Yeah, I just used it in a beat recently this week. But like portability is another thing that gets me about gear
Yeah.
too. Like this thing
Yeah.
is an iPad size, you
That's
know?
like the most portable it gets.
So when you think about like, what am I going to throw in my bag today? Like, I just
Totally.
need 16 pads. What am I going to
Dude,
take with
the
me?
MPC one though is better than the X. The X is
Dude, I
gigantic.
know. I don't know how. Like,
You know what? Do you know what? Honestly, okay, the MPC one is what, $700. Okay, the MPC X is like $2,200. That is not a justified price difference. I can tell you
no,
from
totally not.
experience of working with them that, dude, okay, MPC X is awesome. I use it all the time, but it's way freaking overpriced. It should be like $1,500. Yeah.
And I think,
I don't know.
like, even the way you mentioned, you talked about the Seaboard before, like, when you saw it, you, like, saw the value in it. So you were like, oh, it's not $50,000. It's like $1,200.
Yeah.
And that's pretty doable for the value you get out of it. I think accessibility is super important for these companies. I don't want to keep bringing it back to
Definitely,
Orba, but like
though.
Orba being like $100, like, I think about that all the time.
Oh,
Even
$100. Oh my God, that's crazy. I didn't know that.
I look back and I think about like my 16-year-old self, like when or maybe 16, 17, whatever, whenever I started getting into this and I was like washing dishes and stuff, like I had to be very deliberate about like how I spent my money and like buy gear used if it was super expensive, or like buy gear that's why I'm super into the mini MIDI controllers, because they're like so affordable.
Oh,
and
yeah.
For some reason that has stuck with me, even though like I'm a full adult now and I can afford maybe a little bit more. I'm still like a little bit like, let me stick to the budget friendly stuff, you know?
It's kind of, I don't know, the MPCX is kind of like a status thing or what? Like, I don't know.
The Akai, I don't want to say the Akai cult, but the Akai, let's just say community is very, I mean, because the MPC is legendary and the MPC community has been around for years and years. So I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of history behind it that goes into that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can't hate on it. I love the thing.
For sure.
It inspired me to get into this. But yeah, I mean, you can get the MPC Live for like, what is it, $1,200? I mean, that is a gigantic price difference between the two, and the functionality is essentially the same. So
totally.
Yeah.
I want to shout out the chat real quick. Hello, chat. I see you all. You all are saying nice things, so thank you. I want to finally dive into some of your questions because I've seen them pop up, but we're having such a great conversation and I don't want to interrupt the flow. So now, if you've got questions for Neon Vines, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'll also remind people that today's show is brought to you by 343 TV. If you want to check out some electronic music courses, music production courses, all that, you can go to 343labs.com. And we've got classes starting all the time. We've got youth programs. So if you've got kids or if you know some young teens that want to learn music production, check that out as well. 343labs.com. Okay, I saw a really good question before, and now I can't find it, but it was actually early in our conversation where we were talking about your piano lessons and things like that. And it was a parent writing in, so I'm sorry if I can't find the specific name of the user, but a parent wrote in and said, like, what should I do? My kid's taking piano lessons right now. Like, how do you, like, what would you recommend for maybe parents?
That's a tough one. I think it's finding what area they're most interested in, and to some degree, the skills you need to learn are kind of not so enjoyable. So you can only it's not all about just making it a fun time. I think to some degree the discipline necessary in doing things that you don't necessarily want to do is a valuable skill to develop. So, some of what I learned in piano lessons and getting through it did really help me. But I think just going through, so basically in piano lessons, it's like, okay, today we're learning Tarantella and D minor, and tomorrow it's whatever's on the next page. Like, don't let the piano teacher say we're going step 1 and then step 2. And if you don't like this song, I guess you're going to have to play it for 2 weeks because you didn't practice it. Like, it's the worst.
And then wonder why you didn't practice,
why you didn't practice it. Oh, we're on Tarantella for another week. Like, dude, okay, clearly the kid's having a problem connecting with that song. Try to learn songs that you're interested in. So this is what I tell people who want to get into music production in general. Just what are you interested in? What kind of genre are you into? What artists you like? Try to learn that song on piano. Go to a really basic piano tutorial. Try to learn that. I I feel like you kind of need an instructor, at least starting out. But I think past a certain point, there's so much available on YouTube
Yes.
that as long as you have that discipline and you commit to it, you can learn anything you want from YouTube. I think getting enough direction from your instructor, the foundational knowledge, how to play it, technique wise, scales and things like that, it can be helpful to have an instructor. But when it comes to learning songs and stuff, you can really be your own teacher.
Yeah, for sure.
I
And
think.
you also answered Julian Franco's question, who said, "What would you recommend
Yeah.
for a self-taught person to learn piano?" I think
I said,
YouTube.
yeah,
Yeah, YouTube's
YouTube.
huge for that. Also,
Learning
like
songs you like.
for the parents out there, not only does 343 Labs have a youth program at 343labs.com where you can learn contemporary music stuff, but pre going full like freelance full time and everything, I taught at a program at a Boys and Girls Club for 4 years, and programs like that are like youth driven. So kids aren't going like I had full like Berkeley interns, like full team, like part-time assistant, and we would teach kids piano, we would teach kids guitar, we would teach kids music production, but we weren't cracking open a book and saying like, okay, we're gonna learn Beethoven,
No.
whatever today. We were asking the kid like, what do you want to learn today? What songs
What's
are you
relevant
into?
to you? Yeah,
And
totally.
then we had to develop the skills to say like, okay, like how do I adapt this specific song for this
Yes.
kid's skill level? And there are teachers
That's
out there
awesome.
who will do that, and plenty of
100%.
programs out there for kids that are beyond just the normal. I don't know what you call that, normal studio music lessons where you go in and you do a recital and all that stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's keep on going. Yep, we answered that question. Okay, Daniel Farias asks, when was the moment you realized you could live from music? I think this question's interesting because you talked
That's
about
a
like,
good question.
oh, lunch break, bringing my keyboard, my 88-key keyboard in the car, and then like making the transition, moving to Austin. Like, when did it become like a reality?
So obviously I wasn't making enough money like right when I moved to Austin, so I was dog walking. I was just walking dogs to just be able to pay the bills and deal with that. But I think I realized, oh damn, there's money in this when I'm on Sweetwater's affiliate program, so I can like track my sales and see stuff. And I just kind of like enrolled in it and put some links in the description of my videos and didn't check it. And then a couple months later, I checked it and it was like, oh my God, like I can pay my
Rent's
rent with
paid.
this.
Yeah, there
Rent
you
is
go.
paid.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow. And then so right now what I'm really focused on is monetizing my content. So I'll be completely honest with you, I'm not doing a good job with that right now. I could be doing a way better job. I have no merch. I'm not selling sample packs. I'm working on all this stuff, but like I'm
Takes a
well
lot of
aware
time.
now. Yeah, for sure. So for me, like the focus was just on getting content out there, and I'm not making a whole lot from that. I mean, I'm making, money from YouTube ad revenue, which actually is pretty decent.
Nice.
Surprisingly,
Yeah,
I was
I
surprised
think
by
a
that.
lot of, I think in our world, for some reason, artists, musicians, whatever, for me, like YouTube ad revenue is pretty decent as well. You hear a lot of like
Yeah.
the YouTube crowd, like the YouTube filmmakers and all that talk about like, oh, AdSense isn't worth anything, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. For me
No,
as a musician,
it is.
the
It's
monthly
great.
check is like pretty good.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought it was gonna be like a couple bucks, but dude, yeah, it adds up for sure.
And when it's the difference between like, do I take this wedding gig or do I maybe work on a video that's going to live on for years and generate
100%.
revenue for years? It's pretty easy math.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But you're doing an amazing job. You're like juggling everything. You're posting content every day. You're like, dude, you're killing it. I
It's
don't know
stressful.
why I didn't say that yet, but yeah,
It's
of course
quite
it's
stressful.
stressful. But you're doing a good job of hiding that if you're stressed
I
because you seem
think
like you're vibing.
I think soon, like I'm inspired by people like you. So my model has been to put out a ton of content, like just like really
Yeah.
flood my channel with as much as possible.
dope.
And I think like as I approach 100,000 subscribers, I will
Yeah.
pull back. I will take a little bit of a break. I will reassess, and then I'll pull back a little bit and maybe do a little bit of kind of. I think what you do is
Yeah.
like you don't have really a schedule. You're like, I'm gonna work
No,
on
I
this
need
thing.
to
I'm
get
gonna
better
put it
with
out
that.
there. But
Yeah.
I do like look to your just how you operate as an inspiration too, because you're like, I'm just going to put out a banger and it'll come out when it's ready. And then when the
That
next
is
one
kind
comes
of
out,
what
it'll
it
be a
is.
banger, but I don't know when it'll be. So stick around.
Yeah. It takes like a month of solid work, I think, to pull off one of those performances. And by the way, people are like, "Oh, she's just rolling up to her setup and just jamming out like that." Dude, like the whole thing is memorized, okay? I know exactly the exact beat that I need to mute that kick drum, the exact beat I need to mute that snare. These are for my YouTube performances. It's pretty much just me trying to flex. Like I'm just trying to like go
You're trying to
crazy
do
and do
the
every like
best, like the craziest stuff you can. Can
I
you
would never do that live though. I would never do it
really?
that way live. Yeah.
Interesting.
The only reason I do that is because obviously I can film myself and do 100 freaking takes before I get to the one I
Yeah.
want to use. So
And you make the
yeah.
video and it like I said before, like it lives on for years, so it better be like the
Yeah,
craziest, dopest
exactly.
thing.
Exactly. And the producer in me needs it to be good quality. I can't just like
For sure.
do
And
one take and call it a day.
since you brought it up, can you break down the process of preparing and making one of those videos? You said it's like a
Yeah,
month-long process.
it's a lot. So basically, I go into it not worrying about at all how I'm going to pull it off, how I'm going to perform it. I have no idea what gear I'm even going to play it on. I just, like we said with creativity, it's about just sitting down, keeping it really simple and flowing with ideas. Then I come up with a song concept. I put it into Ableton, I produce it a little bit and get kind of a general idea of what I'm going for in terms of song structure, what elements are part of the song. There's a piano part, there's a drum part, there's a bass verse, there's a bass in the pre-chorus and a bass in the chorus. So I try to break it down all the different parts that I'm going to loop. I actually have like a full on like I do an Excel document and try to notate the exact moments that I need to be triggering clips, muting things, unmuting things, whatever it might be. The whole thing is scripted out. All my performances, like every take that I do is the same. I'm not improvising anything for those. So I know exactly what my Seaboard solo is going to be. Like I plan all that stuff out. When I do like live performances is totally different game. Like I still loop stuff and
Interesting.
I just improvise solos and stuff, but for those performances, yeah, they're super planned out and yeah, it's different for everything though because I think pretty much every performance video I have out there is a different setup.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever used the same setup actually in any of my YouTube videos. So yeah,
What's
it's
the
a different process every
once
time.
you come up with the idea and you're like, okay, this is the song that I'm going to do, these are the controllers I'll use, this is
Yeah.
the basic arrangement. Like, what's
Yep.
the practice regimen like? Like, is it like every single day, two
Yes.
hours,
Oh
3 hours?
God. Yeah. So the first thing I do is I still don't worry about what gear I'm using. I just write out every single element of the song, down to every single vocal sample used, every single effect I'm going to need to trigger. Um, Whether there's a, like I said, is there a bass part for the verse? Is it different in the pre-chorus? Is it, I write out every single possible element.
Like
And
pen
then
and
I try to
paper, like right out? Like,
Yes. Yeah, pen and paper. And then I try to group things. So I'm like, okay, well, I can play the kick, snare, and all these vocal samples on my MPC. So I try to put as many different elements on the MPC as I can, and then say, okay, well, what parts are left? I'm going to need to play those bass parts on something, but oh, wait. I have to have another controller because I have to be playing a melody at the same time as the bass part. So it's kind of trying to actually minimize it as much as I can, which I know it sounds kind of weird considering there's like a ton of controllers in front of me in these videos, but really I try to think of it in terms of functionality. So I usually want my MPC to be anything drum related, like I said, vocal samples and stuff like that. And then I try to restrict what instruments are being played, say on the Seaboard block, for example, only bass and only a synth are played on this. And then, I try to conceptualize where things are. And just logistically, it's a lot of work. Like my brain never feels so swollen as it does when I'm in this
for
part of the
sure.
process. Yeah, it's the most taxing mentally for sure. And then when it comes to rehearsing it and like being able to pull it off, the truth is, at first, I'm like, is this even possible? I'm like, I can't do it at all. I'm trying to play a melody in one hand and drums in the other hand, and it's difficult because actually the most difficult part about it is the fact that there's a completely different type of touch required on all these instruments. So I have to be playing very gently a bass line on my Seaboard because it's so freaking sensitive, and then slamming a drum part on my MPC at the same time. So it's like training your hands to interact with the devices differently. It's not only the fact that they're happening simultaneously, it's the touch technique that I think actually takes me the most time working
That is
with.
something that is so unique to our time. Like, I can't really think of a analog to that in like regular instruments.
No, it's a very unique, I guess
drum set, like you talked about drums a little bit. Drum set a little bit. Go over to a ride. Yeah.
That's everything. It's everything. Yeah.
It's crazy how it all comes together. Like the marimba, the drums, the piano, and now you do this. They somehow all informed it.
Yeah. But I think like the most satisfying part is all of these instruments that are so different and require such different touch techniques become one unit. Like when I'm finally at the point where I'm ready to record it and I'm getting it right on every single run through, I'm like, okay, dear God. And then of course, when the cameras are rolling, I can't do it again, but that's a whole other thing. That's a phenomenon.
Yes.
Yeah. But it feels like I feel baller as hell. Like when I'm performing.
When you nail it.
Yeah. So I'm just like, boom, freaking killing it. But yeah, it takes forever to get there, but everything feels like one instrument to me. At that point in the process where I'm ready to record it, I'm not thinking, oh, there's my circuit, there's my bass station, here's my rig. Like this is one unit. So yeah, it's
dope.
Very satisfying, but also so demanding.
Yeah. I have one more question from the crowd for you. I know we're running long here, but it's nuggets of gold. No, I don't want to take up too much of your time.
You got me ranting. It's easy to rant about.
That's good. So question from the chat is, what advice do you have for young producers trying to get their music heard in the current industry?
Trying to get it heard? Honestly, I wouldn't even really concern yourself with that. I think the most important thing is making the music that you love and like you vibe with. For me, I was never concerned with whether anyone would even watch what I was doing. When I first started out, I was shocked that people even watch my videos. I didn't even know anything about Instagram. I was like, oh, I got 50 views. That's pretty cool. For me, I think if you're just starting out, just make sure that the content is solid and that you vibe with it. Don't be overly concerned with how the world's going to respond to you. I think that actually can hinder the whole process and actually can prevent you from succeeding if you overly concern yourself with other people's opinions. So for me, I think part of what really helped me was that I didn't care at all about how I was going to do this. I think obviously it's different for everybody what's going to work and how you need to put your music out there. But the best thing to do is just focus on the content, make sure it's amazing quality. Don't just put a video on Instagram that's like a still frame and has your song, dude. Right. That's like, come on, you gotta creatively present it, I think. So for me, fortunately, I'm able to perform my production. So for me, that's the visual element. There has to be more than just your song. I think, in rare cases, somebody uploads a song that's really great to SoundCloud and it just blows up, I think it's the combination of some other kind of visual stimuli that really helps you present it. So just give that some thought. Think about a unique way that you can present your song. But before all of that, it's how much you're vibing with what you're doing. Do you like it? Are you listening to it on repeat? Do you already know you're going to push to play again before the song's even over? You got to be really loving your music.
Because that comes through. If you're loving your music, like especially watching your performances, like the way you said it, like you feel baller when you're doing it and when you're nailing it, and that comes through. Yeah. Like you can totally tell. It's after the month of work, putting like drilling it, putting all the thought into it, feeling confident, and then actually nailing it. It's just like you exude the energy.
Yeah, it's so
people
satisfying.
Can tell.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Neon Vines, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
A lot of people, like I think people really loved chatting and being in the chat and watching this interview. A lot of really great nuggets of advice. And if you tuned in later, this interview will be up on my YouTube channel and on 343 Labs YouTube channel. post-show processes for a little bit and the whole show will be up, but you can always rewind and watch the whole thing. Anything you want to shout out? Like, where should people go? I have your YouTube channel linked in the description, but anything in particular they should be checking out?
Yeah, if you guys can subscribe to my YouTube, that'd be dope. I'm trying to grow my YouTube, so yeah, YouTube or Instagram or anything like that. Yeah.
Neon Vines on everything, right?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Go follow Neon Vines. Watch this interview later if you didn't catch the beginning of it. And also check out 343labs.com, music production school. And if you like more streams, go to youtube.com/343labs. We're streaming every single day, tutorials, interview show like this, all good stuff. Every single day at 10 a.m. Eastern, you can watch a live stream and level up your music production skills on youtube.com/343labs. So go check that out. Anyway, again,
dope.
Neon Vines, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you to everybody for watching. For now, this has been another episode of TAETRO Talks. Have a good one.